Welcome to Uplift, inspiring stories to uplift the world. Today we have Timothy Waterman, also known as Beau, joining us. Hello, welcome. Very happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Gemma. It's really, really nice to be here with you.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your journey to Los Angeles and then back on the road. What is a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, this is a story that I love to tell it. It always inspires me and current chapters of my life, and when I'm contemplating like future chapters of my life. And it's one that I always get really good feedback on. And it's when I started my life over at 30. So this is about 10 years ago now. And again, it still inspires me to this day in my own life. And yeah, I had always had a dream to study acting in Los Angeles. I kind of fell in love with Hollywood and Los Angeles through the movies and through film in my teenage years. And I had a grandmother that loved movies, so I kind of adapted her love of movies as well. And I never let myself follow it. I kind of contemplated following it after high school. Just didn't have the courage though. I had never really lived away from home, and it all felt so intimidating. And so I built a life into my 20s, and it was, a very traditional, you could say, kind of like normal life, if you will. And I had all the things that I was told it's supposed to have, and just didn't really have a lot of meaning though. I did not feel like I had meaning, and I just kind of felt a bit empty and hollow inside. And it's because I wasn't following any of my passions. I wasn't following my heart. And as I began to approach 30, I kind of had like this life crisis where I was like, oh my gosh, my 20s are about to end and I'm not really happy, not really enjoying life. And I said, I don't want my 30s to be like this. I really don't want my 30s to be like this. And so I kind of came to a point, and actually my health started to suffer because I was just feeling really low, and you could even say depressed. And so like my health began to suffer. And one day I was just laying in bed and I said, what have I never tried? And the answer was, I've never tried following my heart. And I knew what my childhood teenage dream was, and I just realized it was time to try that, because I felt like I had tried everything else, like, living life the way that other people had told me to live life, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't working out. And so, yeah, at 30, I decided to walk away from everything, move from the East Coast to the West Coast. Like I had a marriage that, kind of dissolved on its own. And that was like the last thing holding me back. And so that's the beginning of it, is when I decided to say, okay, I'm going to leave my life on the East Coast of the US and move to the West Coast and really give this thing a go, give this thing a try. That's at least where the story begins.
That is indeed very inspiring when you finally follow your heart and when you finally release what is holding you back. Because what is holding you back, you are also holding on to it.
Mm.
And when you actually drop, say, you know what, I'm done, I'm gone, see ya, and it's over, and it's good, because indeed at that moment in time you are at that crossroad where you are open, like completely open and ready to receiving the best and what you dream and what you imagine you are worthy of.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a powerful place to be when you're ready to, like you said, drop everything and open up. Yeah, it definitely takes courage, if you ask me. And but yeah, it's just a matter of like, are you ready and willing?
Indeed. So what happened when you arrived in LA? Because there is still a home to find, a transportation, a some livelihood to make happen one way or another, and to find an entry point, because everybody wants to be acting in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. But now, how do you actually get into that field?
Yeah, no, those are good questions. So once I decided that I was done with life on the East Coast and I was ready to move, and again, like the marriage had dissolved, because again, that was the last thing kind of holding me back. I just started researching. I started researching, how do I rent a room? I was looking at apartments or renting a bedroom, and I had been talking to actors who already lived in LA. One I actually met in a local acting class on the East Coast. She was bi-coastal, so she was going back and forth between the East and West Coast. And so I was asking her what it was like to live in Los Angeles. She was giving me information and data, answering my questions. I was also talking to some actors via Twitter, because I was kind of, I was into Twitter at that time. And there was actually an acting podcast that I had found like maybe like a year or two before. And I was talking to one of the hosts of that acting podcast, because he lived in LA and he was kind of giving me some information too. So based on all the answers to my questions that I was getting, yeah, I just started researching. I ended up renting a bedroom. I spoke with someone over the phone. I think we spoke for like 2 hours. They gave me like a video tour of the apartment just to like make sure that we felt like a match. And after they gave me the apartment tour, I just felt like, okay, like seems like a good deal to me. And so I sent money for the first month's rent. And again, I felt good about it. It felt, good inside it out, that decision. And I had actually heard that it was good to have about $10,000 in the bank. This is from other actors who had moved to LA, who are like, if you're going to move here without a job, like you want to have like 10K in the bank. And so I just had that number in mind. And when I decided to go, I didn't have that in the bank. I was like working in tech support at the time. It was kind of like, like paycheck to paycheck type thing. But I had that like 10K number in my mind. And what was really cool is that I had these like retirement savings accounts that were set up, and I've forgotten about them. But after I decided to move, it was really interesting how like within 3 weeks I got two letters in the mail from these retirement accounts, and they wanted me to close them out. And I'm pretty sure they were offering some kind of like incentives, like if you close this out and like get this off our books, like it was something like, we'll give you a little bit extra for closing these accounts out. And when I looked at what closing those accounts out would do for me, it would actually get me really close to having that 10K in the bank. And so I was like, I feel like this is kind of like, God, the universe being like, here you go, here's what you need. And so, yeah, I closed those out. And once I had the room and the savings, I basically was like, okay, I'll just pack up my car with the things that I need and I'll drive across the country. I had a sister who said that she would drive with me, so that made the journey a little bit less daunting, because it's like a 2,600-mile drive. And yeah, when I got there and landed in the room, I just started to get to know the neighborhood. I started going to some improv classes. I found a free improv program, and yeah, I mean, it was free to anyone, so you could go and learn. And the people that were teaching these classes had studied at some of the big improv schools in Hollywood. And so like they knew their stuff. It was a great way just to get my feet wet and get started. And yeah, I just started learning about the town. I started looking for, employment. And what actually connected the dots for me, because it took about a month of me searching. And then someone said to me, have you ever tried working with a recruiter? And I was just like, no. And so I reached out to a recruiting agency, and they actually ended up connecting me with the perfect fit, an actual full-time job. And it had a lot of stuff that I had experience with. So it was just another like magical moment where it was like the perfect thing that I needed to get started. Just, after about a month, it did land in my lap. And yeah, then that enabled me to continue to learn about the city, the industry, look at acting classes. So that's how the dots started to connect, you could say.
it feels magical, right? And the truth is that it's not magic, it is truly the love manifestation in action.
Mm.
It just works. This is what you expect. This is what you vibrate. This is your frequency. This is what you get. As easy as that. But the truth is that you fully, completely embodied your new experience. And you kept in your mind's eye. You wanted 10K, you got almost that. You wanted a room or something to be safe, you got that. You wanted a job, you got that. I mean, everything that you perceived in your mind's eye that this is what you are meant to experience to accomplish your dream that you got for so many decades before, so many years before. It's like, wow. Yes, the universe really happily oblige for anything and everything you ask with a deep, genuine heart and where you dare to go all in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I was there to be like, okay, let's do this. So yeah.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
how long did you stay in LA and how did that go? Did it continue to go super well or did you go through all ups and downs until you say, hey, I'm done?
And I mean, I was there for about 7 years in total. And let's see. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was a whole new city. It's a big city. So it took some time to get to learn, just the layout of the land, to make friends, to again, just see the different types of classes that were out there. So I started experimenting with different kinds of classes. Like I studied some commercial acting. And then another fun part was that, the job that I had was kind of covering, my basic needs and, a bit extra. And but with that job, I didn't feel like I had enough to invest in like acting classes because acting classes are about like $250 a month, at least. And so I remember just like again thinking like, oh, I need I need more money so I can do these classes. And actually, when I had that thought, I had switched to another full-time job in another part of the city, but still was having that thought of like I need more money to take these classes. And I have been doing some social media for two companies I had worked for. The one I was currently at, and then the one before that, I had done some social media for them, and they really liked it. I was getting really good feedback, and so I just started telling my friends, I want to do more social media because I just saw it as a way to create more income. And again, I had like someone say, "Oh, I know someone who's looking for that," and I can set up a meeting. And so I had the meeting. It went really well, and then all of a sudden I had this, extra social media gig. And then I had the funds to start taking, scene study acting classes because those are kind of like the most common is like scene study. And before that, I was mostly studying improv and again some commercial acting. So yeah, that opened the door for me to be able to do scene study classes, and that was just so much fun. Like that was an absolute blast. I ended up going to the school that I had become interested in maybe like 3 years before. Like 3 years before, I was, sitting on my couch and on the East Coast, like looking up acting classes, and I found this school and I really resonated with the teacher. And I was like, oh man, I would love to take classes there. Well, fast forward 3 years later, that's where I started taking scene study classes. And again, it was just like this realization of another dream. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm standing in this studio that 3 years ago I was like, oh, I want to go there. And that's where I studied the longest and had so much fun. And yeah, I continued to learn about the industry. The global shutdown was shut down. And at that point in my life, I was just like, okay, I don't know how long this is going to last. And it had already been a year. And so I was like, well, okay, I don't know how long this shutdown thing is gonna be for. And so I decided to at that point check out another dream, which was living in Colorado. I had been curious about living in Colorado because Actually, the first time I drove to LA back when I was 30, I had driven through Colorado, and I remember being mesmerized by like the rivers and the mountains and the forests. And so, yeah, a year into the global shutdown, I was like, well, I could check out Colorado. And that's what I ended up doing. Yeah, I decided to go check out Colorado and realize a different dream. So, but yeah, 7 years. I was in LA for about 7 years total.
So you are the kind of person who hears that actually, let's consider that life is a big video game. You would say, yeah, kind of. It really, really feels, it may feel real, but it's actually whatever you make up in your mind for real. You want a dream, you get it. You want another one, you get it. You want to have that experience, you get it. You want another experience, you get it. Whatever you feel and you imagine and you dive into, you get it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've definitely seen that time and time again, for sure. So I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. What would be the best advice you would give to yourself if you would actually see, let's say, your 15 years old self, like not yet out of high school,
Mhm.
starting to babble with life and to say, okay, I start to be a big boy here, but how am I going to go about life and what am I going to live? What is the best advice you would give your youngest self?
Hmm. I would offer that if you're clear on what your passion is, to just go for it, to really go all in and explore it. And there may be people around you that don't understand or think that it's not a good idea. And usually those things are coming from a good place in the sense that people just want the best for you, and they kind of, maybe you really going for your passion, your dream, kind of pushes on their own personal insecurities a little bit about life, and whether life will support any of us in going for our dreams. So there may be people around you that don't understand you. However, if you're clear on what your passion is and it really lights you up and it really excites you, and there's a big curiosity that's like, oh, I wonder what that would be like, I would say just lean in and go for it, because you know you'll only ever know if you go for it. If you don't go for it, you'll just be doing other things, probably not fully engaged in life, just wondering what it would be like to follow your big passion. And also just to believe in yourself, to believe that you're supported by life, the universe, God, whatever, however you relate to like that, greater presence in life. And to also just realize that you don't have to be like special. I used to have this belief when I would see actors in films and interviews and movies, I thought that they were special and that I was not special. And so that created this story that following that dream and seeing what it would be like wasn't meant for me, because I wasn't like a special person. And it wasn't until I was again about 30 that I realized that that wasn't true. I realized that was just a story that I had kind of made up in my own experience that kept me like small and limited and really holding back on what I would allow myself to explore. So I would tell that version of me, like, you don't have to be special. Like, we're all made of the same stuff. We're all equal human beings. The people that are on TV, the people that are in movies are there because they decided to choose themselves, believe in themselves, and follow a dream and be curious and see what happens. And, a lot of them had a similar upbringing to me, and they just had a dream and they said, I'm going to go for it. So I would also tell that version, like, you don't have to be special. You just have to be willing to step out there and see what happens.
That's great. Because indeed, when you just release that story that is actually limiting you and keeping you away from your dream, you release that story, which is just something that runs in your mind, and you choose to change, you choose to believe something else. Like, go all in, just give it a try, for real. Yeah, just, you want to go on the West Coast? Go on the West Coast. Go experience it for yourself. You don't know until you don't know. So just go. But when you go with an open heart, you go all in, you go sure that something good is coming out of it, convinced that the universe has your back, convinced that everything concurs for the highest good of those who believe. So that is essential for the success of your endeavors. And that is what you have shown in your life.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I have so many examples that come to mind of the support when you do lean, each time I leaned in and I was like, so for instance, with I really want to take scene study classes now. Yeah, just to watch how that social media gig came in that really like supported and allowed me to do that. And other things too that I weren't expecting, just like getting a phone call like, hey, do you want to come be a part of this? And, it pays $300. And, it felt, again, it was like something that felt good, felt like a match, and it was just out of the blue. And so, yeah, just realizing that the support can come out of the blue. It can kind of take you by surprise in a really good way. Of course, it's good to be clear on what a no is for you, because some opportunities may arise that feel like a no. So you got to know what things aren't a match for you. However, lots of things that were a match did show up. And yeah, that's the cool part, because a lot of them weren't planned. They weren't anything I had to figure out. They were just kind of like either me speaking my interests out into the world and just sharing my interests, and then watching how the dots connected. Or sometimes it was as simple as just like a phone call out of the blue where more support would come in. Even just, phone calls that were like, hey, do you want to come help on this film set and see what it's like behind the scenes? Things like that would happen as well. And so now, like on a real set, watching a real production happen, seeing all the moving pieces and how it works, because that's a great way to learn as an actor as well, like when you're on a set and watching how the whole thing happens, behind the scenes, behind the camera, so to say. And a bunch of things like that happened, and it was because I kept leaning in. So yeah, when you're open and you're leaning in and you're a yes, it's like all kinds of things can happen. And it's really cool to watch the way they do happen. It's fun just to be like, oh, this is cool. And oh, it's cool how that came in and this came in, and it's all helping me explore this dream. So I definitely agree.
That's fantastic. So what are you doing now? How are you making the world a better place?
So yeah, I actually, after many years, like, so during the entire decade of my 30s, I really got into personal growth, like self-empowerment. Acting is all about knowing thyself. So it really facilitates a lot of inner exploration and self-growth in and of itself. Like a lot of my teachers were always encouraging us to like get to know ourselves more deeply, and therefore myself more deeply. And that really led me into the field of personal growth and um, expansion and like things like metaphysics. And I just really developed a hunger and a passion for all of that. And I continue to change my life because I also realized I had a lot of healing to do uh, from earlier chapters of my life. I realized I had a lot of blocks, limitations, insecurities, fears, wounds, you could say, like inner wounds. And so I spent, an entire decade really learning about that world and, healing from things, healing from traumas, if you will, and dove into that more deeply than anything. And acting really helped facilitate all of that. And so I began about like 3 to 4 years ago, I began to like put myself out there as like an empowerment, like transformation coach. And then a couple years later, I actually started offering something that are called channeled sessions, one-to-one channeled sessions, where I'm essentially leaning into my soul wisdom and allowing people to ask questions and get, information from a soul perspective, if you will. So that came about 2 years after I started to put myself out as like a empowerment and transformation coach. And I started to work with people in that capacity and started to help other people just see where they can release themselves from limitations and insecurities, and also just get more clear on what they want to create in their lives. Because a lot of times people, they do want better, and at the same time they're not really able to be completely honest with themselves. They tend to have a lot of stories and limitations that are kind of clouding the whole picture. And so I love to help people get honest and clear with themselves so they can really hear their own heart, because that's what changed everything for me, was finally hearing my own heart at the age of 30. And I kept listening to my heart, throughout the past decade. And I find that when people when they finally hear the clarity of their own heart, usually the answer to their big life questions is very simple. But they can finally hear the simple truth, the simple answer. And then when they hear that, all of a sudden they know how to show up in their lives differently, or they know it's time to finally make a decision, or to, maybe move on from something themselves. And so, yeah, I started doing all this about 3 years ago and have really loved helping people get honest with themselves, really begin to hear the clarity of their own heart, and start to allow themselves to live a life that's more in alignment with their, desires, hopes, and dreams, rather than holding back the way that I did for so long. So yeah, that's what I've been up to for about 3 years now.
That's fabulous. Thank you so, so much. And what is a website or something to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I have one link that makes it really simple. And so through that one link, you can find out, I have a bio that's available from that link. It's where you can access like scheduling appointments with me, all of my social media, like all of it is condensed into one menu. And the link for that is, it has the https:// and then it's snipfeed.co/life is Timothy. Would you like me to spell that, or do you want me just to send it to you, or?
So we're going to put it in the description to make sure to have it clickable. I think
Okay.
that will be the fastest and best way to make sure to have it.
Yeah.
All right. So, Beau, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for sharing those really joyous manifestation of yours, because that is truly uplifting and inspiring for everybody concerned, for real. More than for you alone, but it's really good that even your story keeps on inspiring you. That's also an amazing point of perspective. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me to share. And yeah, again, every time I tell these stories, they just remind me of what's possible, because life keeps going. There's more chapters that unfold, and every time I look back on these stories myself, I just remember, I remember the magic, the manifestation, the support, and just how fun it can be when I truly lean in. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to share today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beau.